So this is the first video in our presidency unit. So we are going to start talking about the president and the executive branch. So first and foremost, there are a few qualifications to be president of the United States. First, you have to be 35 years old, at least. You have to be a natural-born citizen, meaning you were born in the United States, and you must have resided in the United States for 14 years. So you can't have gone and lived in Canada your whole life after you were born in the United States and then come back for a year and decide to be president. So you have to have resided in the United States for 14 years. Informal requirements, most of our presidents have been white, and most of them have been Protestant. All of them have been male. Term lengths. So once elected to office, a president serves a term of 4 years with the possibility of re-election. So President George Washington is going to set that precedent of serving 2 terms. FDR, so this is FDR right here, Franklin D. Roosevelt, is the only president to serve 4 terms. Keep in mind that he was serving in the middle of the Great Depression as well as World War II. So that is much of why he stayed in office for as long as he did. Now, the 22nd Amendment, which was passed in 1951, is going to limit that number of terms. So that, too, is why he is the only president to serve 4 terms. So after he is out of office, so he actually dies while he's in office, they are going to pass that 22nd Amendment, limiting the terms to 2. So that is why every president since Roosevelt has served 2 terms at most. Most presidents have been elected to office, through the election process. Those that haven't have taken place because a president either resigned or died while they were in office. So these are just some of the more recent presidents, excluding President Trump. So this is kind of an older chart, but you can see the most recent presidents that we've had. Okay, so in my lifetime, it's been George Bush, Clinton, George W. Bush, Obama, and now President Trump. So these are just our more recent presidents if you want to read through that in the slides. So let's talk a little bit about secession and what that means. The vice president will succeed the president if he leaves office due to death, resignation, or removal. So for example, when JFK was assassinated, Lyndon B. Johnson took his place in office. When Richard Nixon resigned from office, Gerald Ford took his place in office. So the vice president succeeds the president. And under the 25th Amendment, the VP becomes acting president if the VP and the president's cabinet determine that the president is disabled. So, for example, when Ronald Reagan was in office, he had to have surgery. So for the length of that surgery, so while he is under, President George Bush, who was then vice president, actually served as president just based on the 25th Amendment. So these are just the list of incomplete presidential terms. You'll see some of the more popular ones like Nixon and JFK. Now, Franklin D. Roosevelt, he also passed away while in office, so Harry Truman took over. And then some of the earlier ones, like Abraham Lincoln, so he was succeeded by Andrew Johnson when he was assassinated. So let's talk a little bit about the powers and roles of the president. That's going to be the biggest part of the presidency unit, is those roles of the president. So we have said in other units that enumerated powers or formal powers or expressed powers are given to the president or the federal government explicitly in the Constitution. Now, informal powers are not laid out in the text, but they are necessary to carry out the president's duties. Okay, so we've talked a little bit about those enumerated powers and implied powers. So here we're talking about formal powers that are given to the president explicitly in the Constitution, and then those informal powers, not necessarily in the text, but still needed to carry out duties. So there are 5 really key roles of the president. The first is chief executive, and this is where the president is going to direct the activities of the federal government, so the bureaucracy and all of its agencies. The chief diplomat, and this is where the president is going to conduct relations with other countries and set foreign policy. Commander-in-Chief, and this is where the president holds the final authority over all branches of the armed forces. Legislative leader or chief legislator, you might see it both ways. This is where the president plays a role in setting the country's legislative agenda. And then party leader. So this is where the president is essentially going to be the leader of whichever political party he is part of or representing. So let's start with a closer look at chief executive. In this role, the president is going to carry out the laws of the nation and oversees a large system of agencies and bureaucracies. So this is where the president is going to be overseeing the rest of the executive branch, who is responsible for carrying out the laws of the nation. So he is the head of the bureaucracy and the rest of those federal government agencies that are part of the executive branch. So the Constitution says, take care that the laws be faithfully executed. However, the text does not give a whole lot of detail on how to run the federal government. So this is where the president's cabinet is going to come in. So the cabinet is not actually addressed in the Constitution, but the president needs the cabinet to help carry out all of those duties that are required of the chief executive. So the president's cabinet is going to consist of the heads of 15 major departments, and these are the president cabinet departments here. So you can see like the Secretary of Labor, Secretary of State, Treasury, Defense, Attorney General. So the heads of those 15 major departments, the vice president, and then the heads of other agencies the president wishes to assign cabinet level status. So here maybe the director of the CIA could be part of the cabinet. Cabinet secretaries are going to be the link between the president and the bureaucracy. So whoever is in charge of these departments are going to be the link between that department and the president. And the Senate, just like they have to confirm other federal nominees, they have to confirm these secretary appointments. So as chief executive, the president is going to influence the bureaucracy and agencies by appointing heads who will carry out policies he favors. So the people who are appointed to the positions within the cabinet or within the federal bureaucracy are likely going to be a member of the president's party, maybe somebody that the president has known or worked with for a long time, somebody that the president thinks is going to help carry out his policies and his goals while he's in office. The president can use the federal budget to reward or punish agencies. So we talked about how the president is in charge of that budget proposal, and some of the funds within the federal budget will go to federal agencies and those programs. So if you have a federal agency that's doing what the president wants them to do, carrying out policies and laws the way he wants, it's likely that they're going to be rewarded, whereas if there is an agency that maybe isn't doing necessarily what the president wants, then maybe they will be punished with the budget when it comes to how much funding they're going to receive. Presidents are authorized to require the opinion of department heads in any subject relating to their respective office. So if you go back, you can look at the different offices here. So any kind of policy relating to those offices, the president is going to be authorized to require that opinion of the department head. So you can again look at those cabinet departments in the order that they were created. So you can see that state, treasury, defense, justice, those were all there first. So that's actually going to be part of the first president's cabinet. So George Washington's cabinet had 4. And you can just see the order that all of these different departments were created in. So the most recent one was actually created in 2002. And that was Homeland Security, which is responsible for protecting against terrorism and responding to national disasters. So that department was going to be created after 9/11. So the executive office is also going to be part of the executive branch. And the president as chief executive is going to be over this executive office. So this is made up of policy making and advisory bodies. You've got 3 main groups, the NSC, the CEA, and the OMB. So we've talked about the Office of Management and Budget and how they help the president with the budget proposal. You've got the National Security Council and then the Council of Economic Advisors. So the National Security Council is going to coordinate the president's foreign and military policy and their advisors. Council of Economic Advisors is going to do exactly that, advise the president on economic policy. And then again, we said that the OMB is going to give the president help with the budget and his budget proposal. So now let's talk about the vice president and the first lady. So the vice president doesn't have a whole lot of constitutional duties. So we talked about the vice president's role as the leader of the Senate, the official president of the Senate, but he doesn't really do anything besides breaking a tie when necessary. The vice president can also succeed the president if something happens and he dies in office or resigns from office. However, it's important to keep in mind when choosing a vice president that they could potentially become president someday. Sometimes when the president is running for office, okay, so when they are campaigning, they might try to choose a vice president that's going to help them in their campaign. So, for example, Joe Biden has selected Kamala Harris as his running mate. She is not only a female, okay, so he's got a chance of getting women's votes. She is also of a minority, okay, so there's a chance that he could be getting votes from minority populations as well. So things to keep in mind when selecting a vice presidential candidate. The first lady is not an official government position, but she might get involved politically. Okay, so recent first ladies have focused on a single issue. So for Laura Bush, she really focused on early education and reading. Michelle Obama, healthy at school. You saw those school lunches, okay? So activity and fighting childhood obesity. And Melania Trump has also talked about cyberbullying. All right, and that is where we are going to stop with this video.